Working late, huh?
David, I can explain.
Don't. I've seen everything.
The turkey sat in the oven like a 20-pound monument to my stupidity. 23 years of marriage, and I was still playing house with a woman who looked at me like I was something she'd scrape off her designer heels. "David, did you remember to baste it?" Marta called from the living room, her voice carrying that particular tone, the one that suggested I was incapable of basic human functions. "Every 30 minutes, just like Martha Stewart taught me," I muttered, checking the timer on my phone. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd become the domestic one while my lawyer wife climbed the corporate ladder in her $1,000 suits. Our daughter Emma bounced into the kitchen, her boyfriend Jake trailing behind like a lovesick puppy. At 21, she still had that bright-eyed optimism that made me remember why I'd worked 60-hour weeks for 2 decades. Jake, on the other hand, was everything I'd expected from a college finance major, cocky, entitled, and wearing a watch that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Smells amazing in here, Mr. Patterson," Jake said, flashing that politician smile he'd probably practiced in the mirror. "Emma's been bragging about your cooking all week." "Just don't expect miracles," I replied, wiping my hands on the apron that read "World's Greatest Dad," a Father's Day gift from Emma when she was 12, back when she still thought I hung the moon. The doorbell chimed, and I heard Marta's sister Victoria's voice echoing through the foyer. Victoria had never liked me, not since the day I'd married her precious little sister. She'd made it clear that a blue-collar IT consultant wasn't good enough for the Patterson family legacy. "David's playing chef again," Victoria announced as she swept into the kitchen, her designer purse swinging like a weapon. "How domestic." "Someone has to feed the family," I said, checking the potatoes. "Unless you'd prefer takeout." Victoria's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, David, always so sensitive." My sister Linda arrived next, carrying her famous green bean casserole and wearing that nervous smile she'd perfected over the years. Linda had always been the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over family tensions with gentle words and strategic subject changes. "Everything looks wonderful," Linda said, squeezing my shoulder. "You've outdone yourself." The house filled with the usual suspects, Marta's parents, a few cousins, our neighbor Mrs. Henderson, who'd somehow become part of our Thanksgiving tradition. The conversation flowed around me like background noise while I orchestrated the meal and playing the role of the reliable husband who kept everything running smoothly. That's when I saw it. Marta had left her phone on the kitchen counter, face up, and a text notification popped up on the screen. The preview showed just enough to make my stomach drop. "Can't wait to see you tonight. The hotel room is..." My hand stilled on the carving knife. 23 years of marriage, and my wife was getting hotel room texts on Thanksgiving Day. I glanced around the kitchen. Emma was laughing at something Jake whispered in her ear. Victoria was sampling the stuffing with theatrical approval. Linda was arranging rolls in a basket, humming softly to herself. Nobody was watching me. I picked up Marta's phone. The text thread stretched back months. Photos, messages, explicit details that made my 23 years of faithful marriage feel like a cosmic joke. The contact name was simply Jay, but the profile picture showed a familiar face, Jake's roommate from college, the one who'd been hanging around our house all semester. My vision blurred. Not from tears, I was past that, from pure, crystalline rage. "David?" Linda's voice seemed to come from underwater. "The timer's going off." I set the phone down exactly where I'd found it and pulled the turkey from the oven. My hands were steady, my voice calm. Perfect timing. But inside my head, a different timer had started counting down. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The dinner proceeded like a Norman Rockwell painting, if Norman Rockwell had painted family dysfunction. Marta played the gracious hostess, complimenting my cooking while texting under the table. Victoria held court with stories from her latest European vacation. Emma and Jake sat close together, his hand resting possessively on her knee. I carved the turkey with surgical precision, serving each plate with a smile that felt carved from stone. Every compliment about the meal, every toast to family and gratitude, felt like another twist of the knife. "This is incredible, Dad," Emma said, squeezing my hand. "You've really outdone yourself." "Just wanted everything to be perfect," I replied, meeting Marta's eyes across the table. She smiled back, that practiced smile she used with clients and judges. After dinner, while everyone migrated to the living room for football and wine, I volunteered for cleanup duty. It gave me time to think, to plan, to process what I'd discovered. Marta's phone buzzed again on the counter. another message from Jay. This time, I didn't just read it. I forwarded it to myself, and then I forwarded the entire thread. By the time I'd finished loading the dishwasher, I had months of evidence sitting in my email inbox. Photos, messages, hotel receipts forwarded as screenshots. Enough ammunition to level a city. Need any help in there? Linda appeared in the doorway, wineglass in hand. Just finishing up, I said, wiping down the counters. You know me, can't relax until everything's clean. She studied my face with that sister's intuition that had always made her dangerous. You okay? You seem different tonight. Just tired? Long day? Linda nodded, but her eyes stayed suspicious. If you need to talk, I'm fine, Linda, really. But I wasn't fine. I was something else entirely. Something cold and calculating that had been sleeping for 23 years, waiting for the right moment to wake up. The evening wound down with the usual rituals. Victoria kissed Marta goodbye with promises to lunch soon. Linda hugged me extra tight, still worried. Emma and Jake left for some college party, her laughter echoing from the driveway. Finally, it was just Marta and me. She was in our bedroom, removing her jewelry with the methodical precision she brought to everything. In the mirror, I watched her face. Still beautiful at 46, still capable of making my chest tighten with something that used to be love. Good dinner, she said, not looking at me. Your mother would have been proud. My mother had been gone for 5 years, but Marta still invoked her memory when she wanted to twist the emotional knife. Tonight, it felt like throwing gasoline on a fire. Thanks, I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. So, what's tomorrow's schedule look like? Marta's hands paused on her earrings. Tomorrow? Black Friday. Thought we might do some shopping together. Been a while since we spent a day just the two of us. She turned to face me, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across her features. Guilt? Panic? Fear? I actually have some work to catch up on, she said. You know how it is. On Black Friday? The Morrison case won't prepare itself. I nodded, watching her reflection in the mirror. Of course. Work always comes first. She climbed into bed beside me, and we lay in the darkness like two strangers sharing a hotel room. Her breathing evened out within minutes, the sleep of someone with a clear conscience or someone who'd gotten very good at compartmentalizing. I stared at the ceiling, planning. 23 years of marriage had taught me everything I needed to know about Marta Patterson. Her routines, her weaknesses, her pressure points. She was methodical, image-obsessed, and absolutely terrified of losing control. Tomorrow she was going to learn what it felt like when the controlled became the controller. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thanks for a lovely evening. Your husband is quite the cook. I smiled in the darkness. Jake's roommate had just made his first mistake. I screenshot the message and added it to my growing collection. Then I started typing a response. Black Friday morning arrived with the kind of gray November sky that made everything look like a crime scene photograph. Marta was already gone when I woke up. Her side of the bed cold, her coffee cup rinsed and sitting in the dishwasher. Even her betrayals were organized. I found her note on the kitchen counter. Working at the office. Don't wait up. M, no love, no XOXO. Just an initial. Like a business memo. Perfect. I made myself breakfast and opened my laptop. The forwarded messages from Marta's phone had been busy overnight. 17 new texts between my wife and her lover boy. They were planning to meet at the Marriott downtown, room 412. The same room they'd been using for 3 months, according to the message history. 3 months. While I'd been cooking dinner, helping Emma with her college applications, and working overtime to pay for Marta's partnership celebration party, she'd been conducting her own private celebration across town. My phone rang. Emma. Hey, Dad, how was your morning? Mom said you two were going shopping. I glanced at the empty kitchen, at the note still sitting on the counter. Change of plans. Your mother had to work. On Black Friday. That's insane. You know how dedicated she is, I said, loading the word with just enough edge that Emma would remember it later. Well, Jake and I are hitting the mall if you want to join us. Might be fun to have some backup when the crowds get crazy. Thanks, sweetheart, but I've got some projects to catch up on. After Emma hung up, I sat in my home office and began my research. 20 years in IT had taught me that information was power, and power was leverage. I'd built my career on solving problems that seemed impossible, usually because I was willing to dig deeper than anyone else. Marta thought she was clever, but she'd made the classic mistake of underestimating her opponent. I started with Jake's roommate, Thomas Chen, according to his social media profiles. 22 years old, business major, internship at a downtown investment firm. His Instagram was a masterpiece of millennial narcissism. gym selfies, expensive dinners, and photos from the same hotel where he'd been meeting my wife. Thomas had tagged Marta in exactly 3 photos over the past 6 months. Innocent enough on the surface, a group shot from Emma's birthday party, a picture from some charity fundraiser Marta had dragged me to, and one from a restaurant I'd never been to but recognized from her working late excuses. I screenshot everything, then I dug into Marta's digital footprint, her law firm's website, her LinkedIn profile, her carefully curated Facebook presence. She'd built an image of professional success and family stability, the kind of woman who had it all figured out. That image was about to become a liability. My phone buzzed with another text from Thomas. "Room's ready. Can't wait to see you." This time, I didn't just screenshot it. I called the Marriott. "Hi, this is David Patterson. My wife Marta booked a room for today, but she's running late from work. Could you confirm the room number for me?" "Of course, Mr. Patterson. Room 412. Checked in this morning under Mrs. Patterson's name." "Perfect. And just to confirm, she's planning to stay until tomorrow?" "That's what the reservation shows, sir." I thanked the helpful desk clerk and hung up. Then I booked my own room, right across the hall. The Marriott downtown was the kind of place Marta loved, expensive, discreet, and full of business travelers who minded their own affairs. The lobby hummed with Black Friday shoppers taking a break from the retail warfare, their bags clustered around overstuffed chairs like battle trophies. I checked into room 413 and immediately began setting up my surveillance equipment. Nothing fancy, just a small camera I'd bought for home security, positioned to capture the hallway outside both rooms. The kind of evidence that would hold up in court if it came to that. At 2:47 p.m., Marta emerged from the elevator wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Red silk, cut to show off the figure she maintained with religious dedication to her personal trainer. She looked beautiful, confident, and completely unaware that her husband was watching from behind a cracked door. She knocked on room 412. Thomas answered wearing a hotel robe and nothing else, pulling her inside with the kind of hungry desperation that made my stomach turn. I gave them 30 minutes to get comfortable, then made my move. The knock on their door was polite, professional. "Hotel security. We've had a noise complaint." I heard scrambling, whispered arguments, the sound of someone getting dressed in a hurry. Thomas opened the door wearing hastily pulled-on jeans and a guilty expression. "There must be some mistake. We've been very quiet." "I'm sure you have," I said, pushing past him into the room. Marta was sitting on the edge of the bed, her red dress wrinkled, her carefully styled hair disheveled. When she saw me, her face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, anger, and finally cold calculation. "David." "Hello, darling. Working hard, I see." Thomas looked between us like a tennis spectator, his brain clearly struggling to process the situation. "Wait, you're her husband, David Patterson. Nice to finally meet you properly, Thomas." The kid's face went pale. "Mr. Patterson, I can explain." "No need. The pictures explain everything." I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen, a perfect shot of Thomas answering the door in his robe, with Marta clearly visible in the background. "You've been documenting this," Marta said. It wasn't a question. "For months. Every text, every photo, every hotel receipt you so helpfully forwarded to your lover boy here. Did you know the Marriott emails confirmation receipts? Very thorough record keeping." Thomas was looking between us like he expected someone to start throwing punches. Instead, I sat down in the room's single chair and made myself comfortable. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm and reasonable. "Thomas, you're going to get dressed, pack your things, and leave. If I ever see you within 50 feet of my wife or daughter again, those photos go viral. Understand?" The kid nodded frantically, grabbing his clothes from the floor. "And Thomas, that internship at Morrison & Associates? Marta's firm handles their legal work. Might want to update your resume." He was dressed and out the door in under 3 minutes, leaving Marta and me alone in the wreckage of her carefully constructed double life. She stood up, smoothing her dress, trying to reclaim some dignity. "You can't prove anything." "I don't have to prove anything. I just have to share it." I showed her my phone again, this time the draft email I'd prepared. The recipient list included her law partners, her parents, Emma, Victoria, Linda, and about 50 of our mutual friends and colleagues. 23 years of marriage, Marta. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that the game has changed. You've been playing chess while I've been learning to play war." I stood up and walked to the door. "You have 24 hours to decide how this ends. Quietly, with some dignity intact, or publicly, with everyone knowing exactly what kind of person you really are." "David, wait." But I was already gone, leaving her alone in the hotel room that had become her prison. The elevator ride down felt like floating. 23 years of being the reliable husband, the steady provider, the man who fixed everyone else's problems while his own life fell apart in slow motion. Not anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad, Mom's acting weird. Is everything okay?" I smiled and typed back, "Everything's perfect, sweetheart. Just perfect." Outside, the Black Friday crowd surged through the streets like a river of consumer desperation. But I felt calm, focused, purposeful. The war had begun, and I was finally fighting back. The house felt different when I got home, like walking into a museum of my former life. 23 years of shared memories hung on the walls, wedding photos, Emma's school pictures, vacation snapshots from happier times. All of it suddenly felt like evidence of an elaborate fraud. I poured myself a scotch and sat in my home office, reviewing my tactical position. Marta would be making phone calls by now, trying to control the narrative, figure out her next move. She was a lawyer, damage control was her specialty. But she'd never faced an opponent who knew all her weaknesses. My phone rang. Victoria. "David, what the hell is going on? Marta called me in tears, saying you've lost your mind." "Did she mention where she called you from?" A pause. "What does that matter?" "Just curious if she told you about the hotel room, or her boyfriend, or the 3 months of lies." The silence stretched long enough that I could practically hear Victoria's brain recalculating. Finally, "She said you were making accusations. Paranoid delusions." "I have photos, Victoria. Video, text messages, hotel receipts. Would you like me to email them to you, or would you prefer I post them on Facebook?" Another pause. Then, in a smaller voice, "David, let's not do anything hasty." "Hasty? 3 months of my wife sleeping with our daughter's friend, and I'm being hasty? These things are complicated." "No, Victoria. These things are simple. Your sister is a cheater and a liar, and I'm done pretending otherwise." I hung up and immediately called Linda. "David? Victoria just called me. She's worried about you." "Linda, I need you to listen carefully. Marta's been having an affair. I have proof. She's going to try to convince everyone that I'm crazy, that I'm making it up. I need to know, are you going to believe your brother, or are you going to believe her?" The question hung between us like a bridge neither of us wanted to cross. "David, honey, maybe you should talk to someone. A counselor, or—" "I'm talking to you, right now. Are you listening?" "Of course I'm listening, but you think I'm losing it, just like she said you would." Linda's voice got that careful, therapeutic tone she used when she thought someone was having a breakdown. "David, I think you're under a lot of stress. Maybe you're seeing things that aren't there." I hung up and stared at my phone. My own sister, choosing Marta's version of reality over mine. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. An hour later, Emma called. "Dad, what's going on? Mom came home crying, Victoria's freaking out, and Aunt Linda says you're having some kind of crisis." "Where's your mother now?" "Upstairs, packing a bag. She says she's staying at Victoria's tonight." "Dad, you're scaring me." I closed my eyes. This was the conversation I'd been dreading, the moment when my daughter had to choose sides in a war she didn't understand. "Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has Jake's roommate Thomas been around the house lately, when I wasn't home?" "Thomas? Yeah, sometimes. He and Mom were working on some legal thing for his internship." "Why?" The innocence in her voice was like a knife to the chest. My daughter had been watching her mother's affair unfold, completely unaware of what she was seeing. "What kind of legal thing?" "I don't know, Dad. Business stuff. They'd go over papers in Mom's study, sometimes grab lunch to discuss cases. She was mentoring him or something." Mentoring. That's what Marta had called it. "Emma, I need you to come home. Tonight. We need to talk." "Dad, you're really freaking me out." "I know, sweetheart, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" A long pause. "Yeah. Okay. I'll be there in an hour." After Emma hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my office and felt the weight of what was coming. My daughter was about to learn that her mother was a stranger, that her family was built on lies, that the people she trusted most in the world were capable of betraying everything she believed in. But she had to know, because if I didn't tell her, Marta would, and Marta's version would paint me as the villain. I heard the front door open, followed by Marta's heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She appeared in my office doorway, overnight bag in hand, looking like she was heading to a business conference instead of fleeing the scene of her marriage's destruction. "I'm staying at Victoria's," she announced. "We'll talk when you've calmed down." "I'm perfectly calm." "You ambushed me in a hotel room, David. You stalked me, violated my privacy, and threatened to destroy my career. That's not calm. That's unhinged. I turned my chair to face her fully. Your career? What about our marriage? What about Emma? Emma doesn't need to be dragged into this. Emma's already in it. She's been watching you conduct your affair for months, thinking she was witnessing her mother's professional mentorship. How do you think she's going to feel when she finds out the truth? Something flickered across Marta's face, the first crack in her professional composure. You wouldn't. I don't want to, but I will if you force my hand. We stared at each other across the ruins of our marriage, two people who'd once promised to love each other through anything, now calculating how much damage we could inflict. What do you want, David? I want my life back. I want the 23 years you stole from me. I want to stop feeling like a fool every time someone asks about my happy marriage. You want a divorce. I want justice. Marta adjusted her grip on her overnight bag. I'll have my lawyer contact you on Monday. Your lawyer? Interesting choice of words. Not our lawyer, not a lawyer, your lawyer. How long have you been planning this, Marta? She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. The look on her face told me everything. After she left, I poured another scotch and waited for Emma. My daughter arrived looking like she'd been crying, her usual confidence replaced by the kind of vulnerability that made me remember her as a little girl, coming to me with skinned knees and broken toys. Dad, what's happening? Mom won't tell me anything, just keeps saying you're going through something. I handed her my phone, opened to the text thread between Marta and Thomas. Emma's face went through the same series of expressions I'd seen on Marta's. Shock, confusion, denial, and finally, a kind of broken understanding. This is from Mom's phone? I'm sorry, sweetheart. She scrolled through the messages, her face getting paler with each revelation. When she got to the photos, she handed the phone back like it was contaminated. How long? 3 months that I can prove. Maybe longer. Emma sank into the chair across from my desk, looking suddenly much older than 21. Thomas was here, in our house, sitting at our dinner table. I know. And Mom was... While you were cooking Thanksgiving dinner, she was... Yeah. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of shared betrayal settling between us like a heavy blanket. Finally, Emma looked up. What happens now? I don't know yet, but I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault. None of it. And whatever happens between your mother and me, you're still my daughter. That will never change. Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe she did this. To you. To us. People do things we never expect them to do. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us worst. What about Jake? Does he know? I hadn't considered that angle. Jake dating my daughter while his roommate conducted an affair with my wife. Either he was completely oblivious or he was complicit. I don't know. What do you think? Emma was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her replaying months of memories, looking for signs she'd missed. He's been weird lately. Nervous when he's around you and Mom together. I thought it was just normal boyfriend anxiety, but... She trailed off, understanding dawning on her face. He knew. I think so. Yeah. Another betrayal. Another person my daughter would have to reevaluate. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm sorry you have to go through this. She wiped her eyes and looked at me with a determination that reminded me of myself at her age. What can I do to help? Help? To make her pay for what she did. To make them all pay. I studied my daughter's face, seeing something hard and cold that hadn't been there an hour ago. Marta's betrayal hadn't just broken our family. It had created an ally I'd never expected to have. Are you sure? Because once we start down this road, there's no going back. Emma nodded. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I smiled for the first time in days. Then let's get to work. The next week passed like a chess match played in slow motion. Marta stayed at Victoria's, communicating through lawyers and carefully worded text messages. She was building her case, painting me as an unstable husband who'd finally snapped under the pressure of a failing marriage. But she'd made a critical error. She'd underestimated Emma. My daughter had thrown herself into our campaign with the focused intensity she'd inherited from both her parents. While Marta was busy managing her public image, Emma was quietly documenting everything. Jake's guilty behavior, the timeline of Thomas's visits to our house, the correlation between Marta's work emergencies and hotel charges on our credit card statements. Look at this, Emma said, spreading papers across my kitchen table. Mom claimed she was working late on the Morrison case 17 times in the past 3 months, but I called her office. The Morrison case was settled in August. I studied the timeline Emma had constructed. She's been using work as cover for months. And Jake definitely knew. I confronted him yesterday. He tried to deny it, but he's a terrible liar. He said Thomas swore him to secrecy, claimed it was just a casual thing. What did you tell him? Emma's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I told him we were through. Then I posted on Instagram about how much I value honesty in relationships. His friends are already asking questions. My daughter was learning the art of strategic warfare, and she was a natural. On Wednesday, Linda called. David, I owe you an apology. Victoria let something slip about Marta staying with her, and when I pressed her, Linda's voice trailed off. You believe me now? I believe you, and I'm ashamed that I didn't before. What can I do to help? The defection of my sister was a major victory. Linda was connected to half the town through her job at the community center. Her change of allegiance would shift the narrative in ways Marta couldn't control. Just tell the truth when people ask. That's all I need. David, there's something else. Victoria's been talking to people, trying to get ahead of this. She's telling everyone that you've been controlling and emotionally abusive for years, that Marta was afraid to leave you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Afraid of me? She's building a case that the affair was Marta's way of finding the courage to escape an abusive marriage. It was a brilliant strategy. Turn my wife's betrayal into a story of female empowerment. Make me the villain in my own tragedy. Victoria had always been smarter than I'd given her credit for. What are people saying? Mixed reactions. Some people are buying it, especially the ones who already see you as the boring husband who never deserved Marta. But others remember how devoted you've always been, how hard you worked to support her career. That evening, I sat in my office planning my next move. Marta and Victoria were playing a sophisticated game, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They were fighting the last war, using strategies that worked in a world where information could be controlled. But this wasn't that world anymore. I opened my laptop and began typing. The blog post was titled, 23 Years, A Husband's Story. I wrote it like a letter to Emma, a father explaining to his daughter why her family had fallen apart. I included screenshots of text messages, photos from the hotel, credit card statements showing the pattern of deception. But I also included the human cost, the nights I'd lain awake wondering why my wife seemed like a stranger, the family dinners where I'd felt like an outsider in my own home, the slow erosion of self-worth that comes from loving someone who sees you as an obstacle to their real life. I posted it on Medium, shared it on Facebook, and sent the link to everyone in my contact list. Then I waited. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from friends, colleagues, neighbors, people who'd watched our marriage from the outside and had their own suspicions. The post was shared dozens of times, then hundreds. By Thursday morning, it had gone viral in our small community. My phone rang constantly. Friends offering support, acquaintances asking for details, reporters from the local paper wanting to interview me about modern marriage and social media accountability. But the call that mattered most came from Emma. Dad, have you seen Mom's Facebook? I hadn't. I'd been avoiding Marta's social media, knowing it would only fuel my anger. She posted a response. You need to see this. Marta's post was a masterclass in victim narrative construction. She portrayed herself as a woman trapped in a loveless marriage, emotionally isolated, who'd found comfort in the friendship of a young man she was mentoring. She admitted to poor judgment, but framed it as the desperate act of someone seeking human connection. She painted me as a controlling husband who'd monitored her communications, stalked her, and was now using social media to publicly humiliate her. She called my blog post, Revenge Porn for the Digital Age. It was brilliant, manipulative, and absolutely infuriating. The comments on her post were split between supporters calling her brave and critics pointing out that emotional abuse didn't justify adultery. But the narrative was shifting. I was no longer the wronged husband seeking justice. I was becoming the bitter ex who couldn't let go. That afternoon, I got a call from my boss. David, we need to talk. The situation with your wife, it's becoming a distraction. Clients are asking questions, and frankly, some people are concerned about your judgment. My judgment? The blog post? The social media campaign? It's not a good look for the company. I felt the ground shifting beneath me. Marta's counterattack was more effective than I'd anticipated. Are you asking me to take time off? I'm asking you to resolve this quietly. Whatever's going on in your personal life, keep it personal. After I hung up, I sat in my office staring at my computer screen. The blog post that had felt like justice 12 hours ago now felt like a tactical error. Marta had turned my moment of triumph into evidence of my instability. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw your blog. Your wife's response was even better. Maybe next time don't air your dirty laundry in public. T. Thomas. The kid had some nerve, considering he was the reason there was dirty laundry to air. I was about to delete the message when another text came through. BTW. Marta says hi. We're at the Marriott if you want to continue your stalking hobby. The rage that hit me was pure and clean, like stepping into a furnace. After everything, the public humiliation, the destroyed marriage, the damaged relationship with my daughter, they were still meeting at hotels, still conducting their affair like my feelings were irrelevant. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. The Marriott lobby was busy with the usual mix of business travelers and tourists. I walked to the elevator like I belonged there, like I was just another guest heading to my room. Room 412 was exactly where I'd left it a week ago. This time, I didn't knock. The door was unlocked, a detail that would matter later. I walked in to find Marta and Thomas in bed together, her laptop open beside them, probably crafting their next social media strategy. They looked up at me with expressions of shock and annoyance, like I was interrupting an important business meeting. "David, you can't just—" Marta started. "Can't what? Walk into a hotel room my credit card is paying for?" Thomas reached for his phone, probably to call security, but I was faster. I grabbed it and tossed it across the room. "We need to talk, all three of us." For the next hour, I laid out exactly what was going to happen. Thomas would transfer to a different college, effective immediately. He would have no contact with Emma, with Marta, or with anyone in my family. His internship at Morrison & Associates was over. I'd already spoken to the managing partner. Marta would agree to a quiet divorce with a fair division of assets, or I would release the additional evidence I'd gathered, including financial records showing she'd been using firm resources for personal matters, a violation of her partnership agreement. "You're blackmailing us," Marta said. "I'm negotiating. There's a difference." "And if we refuse?" I smiled. "Then you'll find out just how creative I can be when someone destroys everything I care about." They agreed to my terms. They didn't have a choice. As I walked out of the hotel for the last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but the calm that comes from knowing a war is finally over. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Dad, I'm proud of you." That was all the victory I needed. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment, reading the local paper over coffee that I'd made exactly the way I liked it. Strong, black, with no one complaining that it was too bitter. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Quiet, efficient, exactly as negotiated. Marta kept the house, I kept my retirement accounts, and my dignity. Emma split her time between us, though she spent most of it at my place. The paper had a small item on page 3. Local attorney joins Portland firm. Marta had taken a position in Maine, a lateral move that looked like career advancement, but was really strategic retreat. Victoria had moved with her, sisters in exile, supporting each other in their new lives away from the wreckage of the old ones. Thomas had transferred to a school in California. I'd heard through Emma that he'd changed his major from business to communications, which seemed appropriate for someone who'd learned the hard way about the power of information. Jake had tried to reconcile with Emma, but my daughter had developed a taste for honesty that made his casual relationship with truth incompatible with her new standards. She was dating a pre-med student now, someone who understood that trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to repair. My phone rang. Linda. "How are you doing, little brother?" "Good, really good." "Any regrets?" I considered the question while watching the morning traffic through my apartment window. Did I regret the blog post that had made our private pain public? The hotel confrontations that had probably traumatized everyone involved? The systematic dismantling of relationships that had taken decades to build? "No," I said finally. "No regrets." Even about Marta? That was the harder question. 23 years of marriage, reduced to a legal document and a few boxes of personal items. A woman I'd once loved enough to build a life with, now a stranger living in another state. I regret that she made the choices she made. I regret that Emma had to learn her mother was capable of betrayal. But I don't regret fighting back. Linda was quiet for a moment. "You know, I always thought you were too nice, too willing to let people walk over you." Maybe I was. Not anymore. After Linda hung up, I sat with my coffee and thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago. The reliable husband, the steady provider, the one who absorbed everyone else's problems and never fought back. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating, less trusting. I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it was just a necessary thing. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Emma sending me a link to an article she'd written for her college newspaper, The Personal Cost of Public Betrayal, a Digital Age Cautionary Tale. I opened it and began reading. Emma had written about our family's destruction with a clear-eyed analysis of someone who'd lived through it but maintained enough distance to see the larger patterns. She wrote about the way social media had amplified both the betrayal and the response, how private pain had become public entertainment, how the tools meant to connect us had become weapons for destroying each other. But she also wrote about justice, about the right to fight back when someone tries to rewrite your story to make themselves the hero. She wrote about the difference between revenge and accountability, between destruction and consequence. It was brilliant, mature, and absolutely ruthless in its honesty. I forwarded it to Linda with a note. Proud father moment. That evening, I went to the gym for my usual workout. The physical routine had become a kind of meditation, a way of processing the changes in my life. I was stronger now than I'd been in years, not just physically, but mentally. The man who'd discovered his wife's affair by accident had been replaced by someone who gathered intelligence systematically, who planned responses strategically, who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. As I was leaving, I ran into Mrs. Henderson, our former neighbor. "David, how are you? I've been thinking about you since everything happened." Mrs. Henderson was one of those people who thrived on other people's drama, but she'd always been kind to me, so I didn't mind the curiosity. "I'm doing well, thanks." "And Emma? How's she handling everything?" "She's strong, stronger than I expected." Mrs. Henderson nodded sagely. "Children are resilient, and sometimes they need to see their parents fight for what's right, even when it's messy." "Even when it destroys a family?" "Honey, your family was already destroyed. You just made sure everyone knew who was responsible." Walking home, I thought about Mrs. Henderson's words. The narrative of our family's collapse had settled into accepted truth over the months. Marta had made choices that destroyed our marriage, and I had made choices about how to respond. Neither of us was blameless, but we weren't equally guilty either. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my chest tightened. After 6 months, I still half expected messages from Thomas or Marta, attempts to relitigate battles that were already over. But this message was from someone else entirely. "Saw Emma's article. Wanted you to know that some of us understand why you did what you did. Sometimes the only way to stop being a victim is to refuse to stay silent. A friend." I never found out who sent that message, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the reminder that my story, our story, had resonated with people who'd faced their own betrayals, their own moments of choosing between quiet dignity and loud justice. I'd chosen loud justice, and I'd paid the price for it. But I'd also received something in return, the knowledge that I was capable of fighting back, that I didn't have to accept other people's definitions of who I was or what I deserved. That night, I made dinner for one and ate it while reading a book I'd been meaning to get to for years. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, mine. No one was texting their lover in the next room. No one was building elaborate lies to cover their tracks. No one was making me feel like a stranger in my own life. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a life I'd chosen, and that made all the difference. Outside, the city hummed with the sounds of people living their complicated lives, making their own choices about love and loyalty, trust and betrayal. Some of them would be luckier than I'd been. Some of them wouldn't. But all of them would have to decide, eventually, who they were willing to be when the people they trusted most proved themselves unworthy of that trust. I'd made my choice. I was done being invisible. The war was over, and I'd survived it. That was victory enough.